I have drawn 4,000 borders in my career. Asteroid drift lines, trade corridors, the soft gray seams where one empire's claim bleeds into another's, and nobody wants to be the one who says so first. I am good at it. I was trained to be good at it. The Ossuary Guild does not send apprentices to survey contested space, and by the time I was sent to the edge they call Tharn's Reach, I had already mapped border disputes that ended wars and started them, and I trusted my own hand more than I trusted most living things. That is the only reason I tell this account in the first person and not as a clean entry in the Master Atlas. Because my hand was wrong. Once. And the Guild has never let me forget it, even though they will not say why out loud. Tharn's Reach was unremarkable. A dim orange star, 2 habitable rocks, and a scattering of outposts that traded mostly in patience. One of those outposts belonged to a human settlement. A small one, low priority, the kind of placement junior surveyors get because nobody senior wants to waste a season there. I did not request it. I was assigned it. I remember being almost insulted. I spent 4 months charting the gravitational seams around the settlement, cataloging the orbital debris, logging the human supply routes for the trade ministries who like to know such things. It was tedious, careful work, the kind that earns no commendations and draws no attention, and I was grateful for that. The humans kept to themselves. They did not perform menace, the way some species expect of them, the way the recruitment holos back at the Guild Academy like to suggest, all teeth and posture and warning growls dressed up as documentary footage. They worked. They argued among themselves in low voices over shift rotations and ration counts, the way any tired crew argues. They laughed sometimes badly at jokes I did not understand and did not try to. They were by every measure my instruments could take, ordinary, and I logged them as such, sector after sector, with the small private satisfaction of a surveyor whose work is finally, blessedly, uneventful. There was one of them I came to know by sight, though we never spoke more than the trade pigeon required to clear a docking slot. She worked the lower decks of the settlement's only orbital platform, tending the algae vats that fed half the colony. She was not important. I want that understood plainly, because everything that follows depends on it. She held no rank. She commanded no vessel. She was, in the language my guild uses for such things, a null entity, present in the census, absent from every register that matters. I logged her exactly twice before the change, both times as background detail in wider survey images. A figure at a railing, a figure carrying a canister. The third time I logged her, my instruments refused to classify what they were looking at. I want to be precise here, because precision is the only thing I have ever been good at, and because the Guild's later account of this, sealed, redacted, attributed to instrument failure, is not true. My instruments did not fail. I ran the full diagnostic suite twice before I would even let myself consider the readings real, the way any cartographer would, because we were trained from our first term to distrust the anomaly before we trust it, to assume the fault is in the lens before the fault is in the world. The lens was clean. They simply had no category for what they measured. Her biological signature had altered, not died, not transformed into anything my training had a name for. Altered in a direction my charts had never required a symbol for, because no surveyor before me had ever needed one. I requested clarification from the Guild's central register. I was told, politely, to recheck my calibration. I did, alone, in the cramped instrument bay of my survey craft, running the same sequences a dozen ways, telling myself I would feel foolish in the morning when the numbers settled back into a shape I recognized. They did not settle. I surveyed her a 4th time, at greater range, with redundant instruments, because that is what a careful cartographer does when the first reading offends her own sense of competence. The reading held. Whatever she had become, my instruments agreed on it from 3 independent angles, and none of those angles gave me a word for what they were agreeing on. I sat with that for the better part of night cycle, the way you sit with a number that refuses to reconcile, turning it over, certain the failure must be mine because the alternative was a hole in a discipline I had given my whole working life to. I did not approach her. I want that understood too. This is not a story about a brave surveyor walking up to a frightened anomaly and offering comfort. the way the guild's training holos like to imagine first encounters. I stayed in my survey craft at the regulation distance, and I watched the outpost's own people react to her, and that reaction frightened me more than the readings had. They did not attack her. They did not flee in panic, the way a dramatic account would have it. They simply adjusted, quietly, the way a crew adjusts a watch rotation when someone falls ill, except no one called it illness, and no one used her name in the open channels after that week. The settlement's logistics simply rerouted around her presence, the way water reroutes around a stone it has stopped trying to move. I have surveyed 100 human outposts since, and I have never again seen a community absorb something it could not explain with such total practice calm. It was not fear of violence. It was the older kind of fear, the kind that does not run, because running implies the thing might follow, and they already understood in some bone-deep way I could not measure that it would not need to. I filed my report. I included the readings, the imagery, the altered classification, my own professional judgment that something at Tharn's Reach required a category our atlas did not possess. The guild's response took 11 days. It told me to omit the readings from the public chart and to mark the sector pending further review. It has been pending further review for 6 years. In that time, 3 other surveyors have requested access to my raw instrument logs from Tharn's Reach. All 3 requests were denied at the registrar's level, above my authority to override. I have asked through every formal channel my rank permits. What became of the settlement, of the woman at the railing, of the sector itself? I have received, each time, the same answer the guild gives to questions it has decided not to have, that the matter is closed, that my work there was exemplary, that I should consider the commendation enough. I did not consider it enough. I went back to my own archive charts and looked at what I had drawn before Tharn's Reach, and what I drew after, and I understood, finally, what the guild had actually done with my report. They had not filed it. They had used it. The forbidden border that the wider galaxy now whispers about. The line that every navigator's chart now shows as a great dead zone around human space. Unlabeled, uncommented, simply absent of detail. That line follows almost exactly the boundary my own instruments drew around Tharn's Reach that season. I did not draw the galaxy's fear of humanity. I drew one outpost silence on one dim orange world, around one woman who became something my training had no word for. The guild took my measurement and multiplied it across an entire species, the way a frightened committee will take a single unexplainable data point and decide, quietly, that it would rather not collect a second one. I am not permitted to survey near human space anymore. This is not stated as a punishment. It is stated as a courtesy. They tell me my instruments may be calibrated incorrectly near that boundary, given my history there, and would I not prefer easier work. I have stopped arguing. I have come to suspect that the guild does not actually believe my instruments were wrong. I have come to suspect they believe the opposite, and find that far more difficult to live within any miscalibration. What I know, in the part of my training that no committee can revise, is this: humanity did not earn the galaxy's silence through war. I never logged a single act of violence at Tharn's Reach. They earned it through a single ordinary life turning, without warning or ceremony, into something no chart had a symbol for, and through every other human in that settlement choosing, without a meeting, without a vote, to simply make room for her and say nothing more about it. That is the part the wider galaxy never hears. Not the threat, the composure. I still keep my original survey plates, the unredacted ones, in a case I am not supposed to own anymore. I do not look at them often, but I know exactly where on a master atlas every cartographer in this guild now consults. The colored detail thins into gray, and the gray thins into nothing, and no apprentice is ever told why. I drew that nothing. I have never told anyone, until now, that I know precisely what it is shaped like.